When she came out, she had a folder full of papers. "Just helping Dad organize his legal stuff," she explained when she saw me watching. "Estate planning, insurance policies, that kind of thing. It's complicated and stressful for him." I told him I'd take care of it. "I can help with that," I offered. "I've been managing most of his paperwork anyway." No, she said quickly. "This is different. This is legal stuff. You wouldn't understand it. I'll handle everything. You just focus on, keeping him comfortable." I let her take the papers. I let her handle the legal stuff. Because I trusted that she was helping. Because I assumed family members worked together when someone was dying. That was my mistake. Or at least, that's what she thought. But what Melissa didn't know was that I had started preparing months before that conversation. Before Dad's strange questions about signing documents. Before the missing papers and mysterious legal visits. I had started noticing small inconsistencies around the same time Melissa's Sunday phone calls shifted focus to finances. Documents that appeared and disappeared. Bank statements that showed unusual activity. Dad's increasing anxiety whenever Melissa visited. So I began taking precautions. Every document that came to the house, I scanned and saved to a secure cloud account. Every conversation with doctors, lawyers, or insurance companies, I took detailed notes. I photographed Dad's signatures on legitimate documents, creating a record of how his handwriting looked at different stages of his illness. I recorded some of our conversations too, not secret recordings, but video chats I saved when Dad wanted to talk about important things, capturing his voice and his clarity of mind at specific dates. And then one night, about 3 months before he died, Dad called me into his room. It was late, past midnight. He was having one of his clearer periods when the pain medications weren't fogging his mind. He handed me a sealed envelope. Thick. Heavy. My name written on the front in his handwriting. "Don't open this yet," Dad said, his voice weak but serious. "Wait until after I'm gone. Wait until you see what they try to do." I held the envelope, confused. "What who tries to do?" "Your sister." He closed his eyes briefly, gathering strength. "I love her, Kyle. But I know what she is. I know what she values. And I know what's going to happen when I'm not here to stop it." Inside the envelope, he explained, was a letter. And instructions. Things I would need to know, but only at the right time. "Don't trust what they show you," he continued. "Don't trust the obvious answers or the easy explanations. Wait. Watch. And when the time is right, you'll understand what to do." I wanted to ask more questions, but he was already falling asleep, exhausted from the effort of sitting up and talking. I put the envelope in a safe place, not in the house where Melissa might find it, but in a secure location only I could access. I didn't open everything immediately, just enough to see there was indeed a letter, and several other sealed sections marked with instructions. "Open when," followed by specific conditions. Dad had anticipated this. Whatever this was going to be, he had already seen it coming. He had prepared for it. And he had trusted me to handle it correctly. Melissa moved into the house the day after the funeral. Not a week later. Not after a respectful waiting period. The very next day. She showed up with Kevin and a moving truck, ready to claim her inheritance immediately. I watched from across the street. I was staying with a friend temporarily, as they carried boxes inside and started rearranging furniture. Within 3 days, she threw a party. A housewarming party, she called it. Posted invitations on social media with the caption, "Finally stepping into my inheritance. New chapter begins here." The photos showed her standing in Dad's study, his books cleared from the shelves and replaced with her decorative items. The living room where I had helped Dad through his physical therapy exercises was now filled with her friends, drinking wine and celebrating. The comments flooded in. "Congratulations. Well deserved. You've worked so hard. So happy for you." Melissa replied to each one graciously. But one response stood out. Some people just weren't chosen. That's life. The strong inherit from the strong. She thought she had won. Completely, totally, permanently won. The house was hers. The assets were hers. The victory was complete. And I was out in the cold, dismissed and forgotten, exactly where she believed I belonged. 3 days after the party, my phone rang. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Kyle," she said, her tone friendly in a way that felt calculated. "I've been thinking about you. About your situation." "My situation," I repeated flatly. "You know, being kicked out so suddenly. It must be hard, not having anywhere to go. Not having any resources." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I want you to know that I'm not heartless. Despite everything, we're still family. Are we?" "Of course. Which is why I'm willing to help you. If you need money to get on your feet, I might be able to give you something. A loan, maybe. Or even a small gift." Another pause. "Depending on your attitude, of course." She wanted me to beg. To acknowledge her superiority. To thank her for the generosity of offering crumbs from the inheritance she had stolen. "That's very kind of you, Melissa," I said calmly. "I appreciate the offer." She laughed, a sound full of satisfaction. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Some people would be bitter. But you understand how things work. You understand your place." I let her enjoy the moment. Let her believe I was defeated and grateful. Because the envelope was still waiting, still sealed, still holding whatever truth Dad had prepared for exactly this situation. After hanging up with Melissa, I finally started going through the financial records I had been collecting. I pulled up the bank statements I had scanned, the account summaries, the transaction histories. What I found made my hands shake. Strange withdrawals from Dad's accounts. Large amounts transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. The transactions clustered around specific dates. Dates when Dad had been hospitalized for treatments, when he had been heavily sedated, when he couldn't have possibly authorized major financial movements. I cross-referenced the dates with my own records. On March 15th, 18 months ago, Dad had been in the hospital for emergency surgery. That same day, $50,000 left his savings account. The authorization form in the bank's records showed his signature. But Dad had been unconscious that entire day. I had been at his bedside. He couldn't have signed anything. On June 23rd, a year ago, Dad had been home but barely conscious from new pain medications. That day, the deed to a rental property he owned was transferred to a new owner. Again, his signature appeared on the documents. But I had been with him that day too. He hadn't left the house. Hadn't met with any lawyers or real estate agents. Couldn't have signed legal documents. The pattern repeated across months. Transfers during hospitalizations. Property changes during medication adjustments. Legal actions during periods of incapacity. Something illegal had happened. Was still happening. I pulled out the examples of Dad's signature I had saved. Documents from before he got sick, when his hand was steady. Documents from his middle period of illness, when his signature grew shakier. Documents from near the end, when he could barely hold a pen. Then I compared them to the signatures on the suspicious financial transfers and property documents. They didn't match. Not even close. Dad's real signature had specific characteristics. The way he crossed his T's. The loop he made in the H of Harrison. The slight upward slant of his baseline. These features stayed consistent even as his handwriting weakened with illness. But the signatures on these documents were different. The T's were crossed differently. The H had a different loop. The baseline slanted down instead of up. Someone had copied his signature but missed the subtle details that made it authentic. My chest tightened as the full picture became clear. Melissa hadn't just manipulated Dad into changing his will. She had forged his signature on financial documents. She had stolen money and transferred property while he was too sick to stop her or even notice. This wasn't just family drama about inheritance. This was fraud, forgery, elder abuse, criminal activity that had been planned and executed while Dad was dying. I sat in my friend's spare bedroom, surrounded by printed documents and scanned records, and felt anger surge through me for the first time since Melissa had thrown me out. Not anger at being homeless or dismissed, anger at what she had done to Dad. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. Not the family lawyer Melissa had been using, the one who had apparently helped facilitate or overlooked the fraudulent transfers. A completely different lawyer I found through careful research, someone with experience in elder abuse cases and estate fraud. His name was Mr. Thompson, and he had a reputation for being thorough and aggressive when evidence supported his cases. I brought him everything: the scanned documents, the signature comparisons, the timeline of transfers matched against Dad's medical records, the recordings I had saved. He spent 2 hours reviewing the materials, his expression growing more serious with each page. Finally, he looked up at me. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "What your sister presented as your father's will and estate plan. If it's based on these forged documents, it's completely invalid. And the financial transfers constitute criminal fraud." "Can we prove it?" "With what you've gathered?" "Yes. The signature analysis alone would be compelling. But combined with the medical records showing your father's incapacity during the dates in question, and the pattern of transfers, this is a strong case. Very strong." He started making notes, planning our strategy. "We need to move quickly but carefully. File challenges to the property transfers. Request forensic handwriting analysis. Report the suspected fraud to the appropriate authorities. And most importantly, prevent any further asset transfers before legal holds can be established." I pulled out Dad's envelope, the one I still hadn't fully opened. "There's more," I said. "My father left me specific instructions. I think he knew this was coming." Mr. Thompson moved fast. Within 48 hours, he had filed multiple legal actions. Requests for investigation into the property transfers. Motions to freeze assets pending fraud review. Reports to financial institutions about suspected forgery. The system processed these requests faster than Melissa could have anticipated. She was celebrating her victory, not watching for legal challenges. She had been so confident in her scheme that she hadn't prepared for the possibility of resistance. On Thursday morning, 1 week after she had thrown me out, Melissa tried to use her credit card at an expensive restaurant. It declined. She tried another card. Also declined. She called the bank from the restaurant, her voice loud enough that other diners could hear. Her accounts had been frozen pending investigation. All of them. The ones she thought were now fully hers, locked by order of the court while fraud allegations were examined. She called me 20 minutes later, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and panic. "What did you do? Did you do something? The bank says my accounts are frozen. They're saying there's an investigation. Did you file some kind of complaint?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I said calmly, which was technically true. I hadn't personally frozen her accounts. The legal system had done that based on evidence my lawyer presented. "This is you. I know it's you. You're trying to sabotage me because you're jealous. Because Dad chose me over you." "Did he though?" I asked. "Did he really choose you? Or did you make that choice for him?" She hung up without answering. The investigations moved quickly once they started. Financial fraud investigators contacted Melissa directly, requesting documentation, asking questions about specific transactions, scheduling interviews about her role in managing Dad's estate during his illness. Property ownership came under official review. The county clerk's office flagged several deed transfers as potentially fraudulent, placing holds on the properties until authenticity could be verified. Melissa's lawyer, the family lawyer who had processed her version of the will, suddenly became very busy with other cases and hard to reach. Which made sense, because if he had knowingly helped with forged documents, his own legal license was at risk. I watched from a distance as Melissa's tone changed in her communications with me. The arrogance disappeared. The satisfied superiority vanished. Instead, she became defensive, then desperate. She posted on social media about frivolous legal challenges and jealous family members causing trouble. But her friends' support was more muted now. People started asking questions. If there was an investigation, maybe things weren't as clear-cut as they seemed. Cracks started forming in her perfect narrative. The house that was supposed to be hers might not be. The inheritance she had claimed might be based on fraud. The victory she had celebrated might be built on lies. And everyone was watching as those cracks widened. The family group chat that had been so active during Dad's funeral went suddenly completely silent. Nobody posted condolences anymore or shared memories. The conversation had shifted to private messages, whispers that I couldn't see but could feel. Then my cousin Brandon reached out privately. "Hey, is it true? What they're saying about Melissa and forged documents? Where did you hear that? It's all over the family." Aunt Patricia told my mom. "People are talking, asking if she really did it. If Dad's will was fake." The same people who had watched me get thrown out without protest were now questioning whether Melissa deserved what she had claimed. Not because they cared about me or about justice, but because they cared about being associated with a scandal. Within days, the whispers became open conversations. Did she really forge signatures? Were those transfers legal? Should we have questioned things at the funeral? My Aunt Patricia, who had loudly proclaimed that the responsible child inherited everything, now claimed she had always had some doubts about the situation. My uncle suddenly remembered, thinking something seemed rushed about the will reading. People were rewriting their own narratives, distancing themselves from Melissa, preparing to switch sides if the legal outcomes went against her. The same relatives who had laughed at my humiliation were now reconsidering which brother had actually been wronged. Melissa's carefully constructed life started collapsing in visible ways. Her fiancé Kevin, who had helped her move into the house with such enthusiasm, started posting less frequently with her. Their couple photos disappeared from his social media. When she tagged him in posts, he didn't respond. Then I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Kevin had moved out of the apartment they shared, citing needing space and reconsidering priorities. Translation: he didn't want to be associated with a potential criminal investigation. Her friends stopped responding to her posts as actively. The enthusiastic comments dried up. People who had celebrated her inheritance with her now maintained careful distance, protecting their own reputations from potential scandal. Her perfect life, the fashionable clothes, the exotic vacations, the glamorous events, started showing signs of stress. She posted angry rants about fake friends and people who abandon you when things get hard. She deleted old posts, trying to erase evidence of her celebration and arrogance. But the internet remembers everything. Screenshots of her "some people just weren't chosen" comment circulated among family members. Her triumphant housewarming party photos were saved and shared as examples of premature celebration. Everything she had built her identity around, success, social status, winning, was disintegrating. And it was happening publicly, where everyone could watch. Too late to save her reputation. The damage was already done. 2 weeks after her accounts froze, official legal notice arrived at the house. Potential fraud charges were being considered. Property ownership was under comprehensive review pending forensic analysis of signatures and authorization documents. Criminal investigation was proceeding. That evening, Melissa showed up at my friend's apartment where I was staying. She looked different from the confident woman who had thrown me out. Her hair was messy. Her clothes were wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She was crying before I even opened the door fully. "Kyle, please," she said. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was trying to secure our future. Mine and Kevin's. I thought Dad would want me to have everything because I was more successful, more capable of managing it. By forging his signature? I didn't. He was so sick. He couldn't understand the documents anymore. I was trying to help, to make sure things were organized properly. By stealing money while he was hospitalized?" She started crying harder. "Please, make this stop. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you're dropping the challenges. We can share everything. 50-50. You can move back into the house. We'll split it all." I stood there, looking at her exactly the way she had looked at me when she threw my suitcase onto the porch. Calm, unmoved, in control. "It's too late for that," I said simply. After Melissa left, I finally opened the rest of Dad's envelope. The sections I had been instructed to wait for. the parts he had sealed with specific conditions. Open when the truth becomes necessary. Inside was another document. Not a letter this time, but an official legal filing. A will, time-stamped and notarized 4 years ago, long before Dad got sick. I read through it carefully, my hands trembling. This wasn't the will Melissa had presented. This was different. Filed privately with a lawyer I had never heard of. Not the family lawyer Melissa used, but a completely separate legal firm Dad had hired without telling anyone. The will was comprehensive and clear. It outlined Dad's wishes in detail. It specified exact distribution of assets, properties, and accounts. It had been witnessed properly and filed according to all legal requirements. And it said in clear, unambiguous language that everything, the house, the business assets, the investment accounts, the rental properties, was to be left to me, to Kyle Harrison, his younger son, the one who had stayed and cared for him. There was a note attached in Dad's handwriting. By the time you read this, Melissa will have shown her true character. Don't be sad about it. I'm not. I knew who she was. I knew what she would do. I prepared for it. This is the real will. The one that matters. Everything I built is yours. You earned it. You deserve it. Use it well. The court date arrived 3 weeks after the investigations began. Mr. Thompson had filed formal challenges to the will Melissa presented, backed by evidence of fraud and the existence of Dad's earlier legitimate will. We arrived at the courthouse early. Melissa was already there with her lawyer, looking exhausted. Kevin wasn't with her. Her Aunt Patricia wasn't there to support her. She sat alone on a bench outside the courtroom, staring at nothing. When she saw me, she approached quickly. "Please, Kyle," she whispered urgently. "We can still fix this. We're family. We can work something out. I'll admit I made mistakes. I'll apologize. Just please don't do this to me." "You did this to yourself," I said quietly. "I'm just making sure the truth comes out." The truth. The truth is that Dad loved us both. He would want us to work together, not destroy each other in court. If that was true, he wouldn't have filed a separate will specifically to protect his assets from you. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out soon enough." We entered the courtroom. The proceedings began. Mr. Thompson presented evidence methodically. The signature analysis showing forgery, the medical records proving Dad's incapacity during key transactions, the pattern of unauthorized transfers, the timeline of fraud. Melissa's lawyer tried to defend her actions, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic handwriting expert testified first. She had analyzed the signatures on the documents Melissa had submitted, comparing them to authenticated examples of Dad's writing from throughout his life. "These signatures are forgeries," she stated definitively. "They replicate some superficial features of Mr. Harrison's writing, but they lack the fundamental characteristics that would make them authentic. The pressure patterns are wrong. The stroke sequences don't match. These were copied, not written naturally by Mr. Harrison." Then came the medical expert, who reviewed Dad's condition during the dates when major financial transactions supposedly occurred. On these dates, Mr. Harrison was either hospitalized and unconscious, or heavily sedated at home. He would not have had the mental capacity to understand complex financial documents, let alone sign them validly. The financial investigator presented evidence of unauthorized transfers. Money moved from Dad's accounts to shell accounts, then to accounts controlled by Melissa. Property deeds changed hands during periods when Dad couldn't have met with lawyers or real estate agents. The courtroom was silent as the evidence mounted. Each piece fit together into an undeniable picture of systematic fraud. Then Mr. Thompson presented Dad's real will. The one filed 4 years ago. The one that predated Melissa's version by years. The one that had been properly executed, witnessed, and registered. The judge reviewed it carefully, compared the dates, examined the documentation. The silence stretched. Finally, forgery is confirmed. The unauthorized transfers are proven. The will presented by Ms. Harrison is invalid. All assets will revert to the rightful beneficiary as specified in the legitimate will filed 4 years prior. A pause. Mr. Kyle Harrison. The aftermath happened quickly. Word spread through the family within hours of the court ruling. The same relatives who had supported Melissa, who had laughed at my humiliation, who had praised her as the responsible child, they all started calling. Aunt Patricia called first. "Kyle, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Melissa was doing those terrible things. I always knew something felt off about the whole situation. I should have said something at the funeral. But she hadn't said something. She had laughed. My uncle sent a long email. You were always the one who really cared about your father. I should have recognized that. Should have questioned why he would leave you nothing. It never made sense. But he had accepted it without question when he thought it benefited Melissa. Cousins, family friends, distant relatives, they all reached out with apologies and explanations. I always knew you were the responsible one. I never believed Melissa deserved everything. I was so shocked when I heard what she did. But their shock was selective. Their knowledge was convenient. They only always knew after the court proved what I had been saying all along. I responded to each message politely, thanked them for reaching out, accepted their apologies with grace. But I didn't forget. I wouldn't forget. People only respect truth when it wins. Melissa lost everything over the following months. The house went back to the estate, which meant it became mine according to Dad's real will. She had to move out within 30 days. She faced criminal charges for the forgery and fraud. The district attorney's office built a case using all the evidence that had come out during the civil proceedings. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial. 3 years probation, full restitution of stolen funds, and a permanent criminal record. Her reputation was destroyed completely. The social media accounts that had showcased her perfect life went silent, then were deleted entirely. Friends who had celebrated her success now avoided her. The professional network she had built distanced themselves from association with a convicted fraudster. Kevin left permanently, moved to another city, posted vague messages about new beginnings, and leaving the past behind. He never mentioned Melissa again. She lost her job when the company's HR department learned about the criminal charges, ethics violations, and conduct incompatible with company values. Her career in the industry was effectively over. The life she had built, the success, the status, the winning, all of it collapsed. And the collapse was as public as her victory had been. Everyone who had watched her celebrate watched her fall. This was the life she had constructed through lies and fraud. And this was the consequence. 6 months after the court ruling, I stood in Dad's house, my house now, and looked at what had become of the space. The changes Melissa had started making were half-finished and abandoned. I had them undone, restoring the house to something closer to how Dad had kept it. I expanded what Dad had built, but quietly and carefully, the way he had taught me. The rental properties he owned, I improved and managed properly. The investment accounts I diversified and grew. The small business interests he had maintained I developed strategically. I didn't post about it on social media. Didn't announce my success to the world. Didn't need validation or recognition from people who had dismissed me. I just did the work properly and thoroughly, the way Dad had shown me. His study became my workspace. I kept his books on the shelves, his photographs on the walls. Working there felt like continuing a conversation we had started years ago, during those late nights when he taught me what actually mattered. The finances stabilized and grew. The properties appreciated in value. The investments generated steady returns. Everything Dad had built was not just preserved but enhanced. Quietly. Properly. Without performance or pretense. Exactly the way he had taught me. 1 year after being thrown out, I stood in the same doorway where Melissa had handed me my suitcase during Dad's funeral reception. The memory was still vivid. Her cold expression, the relatives watching without intervening, the humiliation of having my belongings scattered across the porch. I could still hear her words echoing in my mind. You were never really family anyway. I smiled slightly, the same smile I had given her that day when I walked away. Because even then, holding Dad's envelope, I had known something she didn't. The truth was, I was the only one Dad trusted. The only one he believed understood what mattered. The only one who earned the inheritance through years of quiet dedication rather than loud demands. Melissa had wanted everything people could see, the house, the status, the appearance of wealth. So Dad let her think she could have it. Let her reveal exactly who she was. Let her build her victory on a foundation of fraud and lies. Meanwhile, he left me the real inheritance. Not just the assets and properties, but the lessons about character, about quiet strength, about the difference between what people see and what actually matters. Sometimes they take everything you can see. They celebrate it. They flaunt it. They believe they've won. Because they don't realize the real inheritance was never visible. It was trust, integrity, and the truth that always, eventually, comes to light. And when it does, everything built on lies collapses while what's built on truth endures.